Welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and I made a glass cannon deck, and I'm here to tell you all about it. It is my newest deck and really one of my favorite decks already to play, although it is a glass cannon. And what is a glass cannon? Well, the name really says it all. Essentially, it's a cannon made of glass, right? So the cannon being, I'm just doing this big explosive thing. I'm just blowing up the table, or I'm blowing up maybe one individual opponent. I just have this big, splashy, possibly game-ending thing that I am doing in my deck. However, that thing is made of glass, which means it's very fragile, right? It's very easy to break it up, or it's very easy to disrupt it. So essentially, it's a deck where you're just doing a whole bunch of crazy things or one big crazy thing, but your opponents likely can screw up your plan easily with a little bit of interaction or maybe a counter spell. Sometimes it can be tons of fun. Sometimes it can be really difficult to play, and you will often sit there spinning your wheels, not doing a whole lot. It's a risk. I don't recommend making a bunch of decks like that, but I thought I would make myself one, and I did. It is my Thrasta Tempest Roar deck, and this is a commander that I remember when it came out was one of those commanders that people were sort of looking at going, man, what am I supposed to do with this? It certainly was a difficult one. 10 green. That's right, this guy costs 12 mana, dinosaur 7/7, but this spell costs 3 less to cast for each other spell cast this turn. Has trample and haste. Okay, that's pretty good, especially with the 7 power. This entirely unique ability, they've actually never revisited this ability. I wasn't sure if they were ever going to, and they haven't. Trample over planeswalkers. This creature can deal excess combat damage to the controller of the planeswalker it's attacking. So in other words, the excess damage, let's say there's 2 extra damage, will get done to that planeswalker's controller, right? So it's basically doing the same thing that normal trample damage does, but instead of with creatures, it's doing it with planeswalkers, right? Also, Thrasta's Tempest Roar has hexproof as long as it entered the battlefield this turn, which of course is pretty important for a creature that has haste, although not super fantastic. What are you going to do with this guy, right? And it's funny, actually really funny, how this deck came together for me, and I threw it together in paper pretty quickly after I decided to go with it. When this commander first came out, I was doing Commander Quick Brew videos on my channel, very early on in my channel, of course. I think I was doing it for about 4 or 5 months when Modern Horizons 2 came out, and I thought, you know, I'll do these Commander Quick Brews because I wasn't sure what exactly to do with spoilers at that point. And I thought when new commanders came out, I would just sort of throw out these ideas of what people could do with them, especially the ones that are difficult to build around, as this one is. And I throw out an idea for this guy. And then what happens once your Thrasta's off the table, right? I don't know, you know, like, is it going to be that easy? How many mana rocks are you going to have in your hand that you can go bam, 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 and then cast, right? The spells you cast have to be less than 3 mana, or you're not saving yourself anything, right? They have to be 0 or 1 or 2. You could also throw a bunch of these 0 mana equipments in here as well that I guess you could later on equip them to your commander, so they're not going to be completely useless. You know, every 0 mana equipment you put in there is going to reduce the cost of your commander by 3 though, so there's definitely that. Right off the top of my head, I came up with this idea that, okay, well, any spell you cast that is less than 3 mana value, of course, will be helping you reduce the cost of casting your commander. That does make sense. But 0 mana things is really going to help it, right? Of course, because they don't cost anything. And of course, if you're looking at those 0 mana cards in the game of Magic, I mean, there's a few that are mono green, but obviously most of them are going to be artifacts. There is a lot of artifacts in the game of Magic that cost 0 mana. Some of them actually cost 0 mana, like a Kite Shield, right, or something like that. Some of them cost 0 mana, like an Everflowing Chalice, where, yeah, you can cast it for 0, but it's not going to do anything, so you probably want to put mana into it. And of course, a bunch of them are the X spells, like an Astral Cornucopia that has XXX, so if I pay 0 mana for this, again, it doesn't do anything, so I can put a lot of mana into it if I want to, but ultimately, all of them I can cast for free. That's what I'm looking for here, is spells I can cast for free so that I can get my commander out really cheap. Now, there's a few problems with this strategy. Number one, the storm thing, which you're kind of doing in your deck, right? Casting a whole bunch of spells all at once. That's what your commander wants. So of course, finding other cards that work in that strategy, that's not really a great strategy in green. There are a couple, and in fact, in Modern Horizons 2, they came out with Hunting Pack, 5 green instant, create a 4/4 green beast creature token and has storm. So this can be kind of an alt win con in your deck where you can cast a whole bunch of 0-mana artifacts and then cast this and make, 8 or 12 beast tokens. That's not bad. It's not great. For 7 mana, I don't know how great it is, but it is an alternative. Weather the Storm is another one that came out, funny enough, in Modern Horizons 1 that gains you 3 life and has Storm, so it's a decent way to gain a bunch of life. Certainly not going to help you win the game, though. Sprouting Vines is actually a really old card that has Storm that will let you search your library for a basic land card and put it in your hand for each of the times that you resolve it. And of course, that's pretty good, but again, is certainly not going to help us win the game. There are a few things you can do there, but it's certainly not going to be your main strategy. And if you're building around the artifact theme in mono green, that's also not a super great strategy to build around. However, since I first made that video talking about Thrasta, of course, we have gotten a few more cards that will help out here, like Teething Wormlet has Death Touch as long as you control 3 or more artifacts, and whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. If this is the first time this ability is resolved this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Teething Wormlet. So this is a guy that we can have out, and again, when we cast a bunch of artifacts on our turn, you're not going to be wanting to do it a lot, right? You don't want to throw out your Kite Shield on turn 2 just to put a counter on your Teething Wormlet. That's a waste, right? You want to wait until you're casting your commander, but when you do, this will gain us a bunch of life. That's not bad. Sarenth Steelseeker is maybe even better. When an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you may reveal it and put it in your hand. If you don't, you can put it into your graveyard. So that is a nice little effect that we can have in the deck that will help us when we're going off with our 0-mana artifacts, because again, they're going to come into play and they're mostly not going to be used. And in fact, if we're playing our Astral Cornucopia with 0 charge counters on it, isn't going to do anything. It's just going to sit there. And in fact, some of these X creatures like a Shifting Wall or a Stone Coil Serpent, when we play them, they're just immediately going to die. It's essentially just getting us a free cast trigger, right? However, there is also some stuff we can do there, right? Like I threw an Arcbound Ravager in here. There's a creature that can come down, and now I can just sacrifice all those worthless artifacts on the table and it'll get a lot bigger. Arcbound Crusher is a fantastic one. 4-mana Juggernaut 0/0 with Trample. Whenever another artifact enters the battlefield, any artifact entering the battlefield, in fact, this card's probably underplayed in the format, put a +1/+1 counter on Arcbound Crusher. So we can make this guy real big by just throwing a bunch of 0-mana artifacts in play. Alloy Animist is a funny one. 1 green mana, human druid, 1/1, pay 2 and a green. Until end of turn, target non-creature artifact you control becomes a 4/4 artifact creature. So this is another way for us to use those useless artifacts lying around. Got that Astral Cornucopia with no charge counters on it. You can turn it into a 4/4 creature, right? That's pretty good. I also put Fecundity in the deck. Used to be a commander staple, and it's funny when you think about how much the commander format has changed since I started playing. This was actually a very common draw spell for green decks back in the day before they started printing all these busted options for drawing cards. Whenever a creature dies, its controller draws a card, so of course your opponents get to use this as well. So you're going to put it in your deck because it's more of an advantage for you, and of course, we can just throw out our 0-mana 0/0 creatures into our Fecundity, of course, if we just want to draw a bunch of cards, right? I could just cast my Hangerback Walker for 0 or my Phyrexian Marauder for 0. It'll immediately die, and I get a card draw off of it. That's actually not nothing, right? It's also important because our commander is going to be dying a lot, and this is why I decided to put this deck together, because I realized, okay, just getting your commander out real fast so you can attack with it. It's got hexproof the first turn it comes out, but after that, it's an absolute removal magnet, and someone's just going to kill it. That doesn't seem like a very good game plan, right? I got a bunch of artifacts lying around now that I can't really use much. Well, hold on a sec. It's really easy to refill your hand in green, right? I can just Hunter's Insight or Hunter's Prowess my commander and just easily refill my hand. But even better, I can just use a Greater Good to sacrifice my commander right after it attacked. I can have my commander come down, swing with it. It's got hexproof, so it's almost assuredly not going to be dying on my opponent's turn. And then after I've connected with it, I'll just sacrifice it and draw 7 cards. Now, why would I want to do that? Well, 2 reasons. 1, it's likely my commander will be dying on someone else's turn anyway, because the hexproof will be shut off as soon as I pass turn, but also I can even just easily recast it again. Remember, guys, your commander is looking for the spells you've cast this turn. So if I cast a Kite Shield, and a Mishra's Bauble, and a Astral Cornucopia for 0, I've now cast 3 spells this turn. My commander is only going to cost 3 mana, right? 1 green, green. Then I cast my commander. Now I've cast 4 spells this turn, right? My storm count is 4. I attack with my commander, sacrifice it, draw 7 cards. Then I cast a couple of more things, and your commander's cost reduction eats into the commander tax as well. So now if I cast a couple more things on my turn, my storm count is up to 6 now. My commander's cost is reduced by 18. That's right, 3 for every spell I've cast this turn. So that means not only is my commander reduced by that original 10, but it's also reduced by the commander tax. So if I got the green mana, now I can cast it again, and I can even sack it again. I can keep going, right? You can really go nuts with this commander. That's why it is a glass cannon deck. You can completely go off with this guy. I'll sack him again. The storm count continues. I've cast my commander. Now my storm count is up to 7. Do it again. Now it's up to 8, 9, 10. My commander is always only going to cost a green and a green using this strategy, right? I'll probably have a huge, massive turn. Will I actually accomplish that much in the turn? Can I actually kill someone on a single turn? Maybe. I don't know. I found a real funny card that actually fits perfectly in the deck, which can possibly give the one-shot scenario for you, which is Extruder. Funny old card. Originally from Urza block, and funny enough, was reprinted in Modern Horizons 2. I wonder if they had planned this. I'm not sure. 4 mana artifact creature Juggernaut 4/3 with Echo 4. When's the last time you saw that ability on a creature, right? And it has sacrifice an artifact, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Well, this is doing what an Arcbound Ravager is doing, of course, except it's any creature can get those +1/+1 counters on it. So now we can play our Extruder, sacrifice all those useless artifacts we have in play, and pile all those counters on our commander. So it is a possibility to get the one-shot scenario here with this deck. Not really my thing, I'll be honest. I don't love Voltron decks. I don't love one-shotting people with my commander. I don't really plan on doing that a whole bunch with this deck. The big reason why I ultimately decided to put this deck together in paper, I mean, first of all, I did it because I just don't have any other deck like this, and I'm trying to diversify my portfolio, but also this funny combo that I talked about in my 99 deck ideas video, and funny enough, I talked about Thrasta in that video, and I also talked about this funny combo in that video, and immediately after editing and uploading that video, I realized, hey, I can combine these two ideas because they are both playing into the 0 mana artifact strategy, which is Multenny's Presence. 1 green mana enchantment. Whenever a spell you cast is countered, draw a card. And the funny thing about this is this effect works on you as well. What that means is if you counter your own stuff, it works on you as well. Now, I will say, this is not a completely useless card in the deck already, right? I can just play this on turn 1, and if somebody counters something I do, I get to draw a card. That's not bad. This will never be a useless card in a commander game, I guess, unless no one's playing blue, right? However, in this deck, we have this little funny combo that has been assembled here with Vexing Bauble. Whenever a player casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. Again, an effect that is always going to be useful in a commander game, but also is useful against us, of course, because we are casting all these spells without mana. I cast a Kite Shield with Vexing Bauble in play. Of course, I haven't spent any mana to cast it, so it will get countered. And then my Multenny's Presence will trigger, and I'll get to draw a card. And this is where you can really get into some funny scenarios storming off, because whenever I run one of these 0 mana artifacts into my Vexing Bauble or my Chalice of the Void, which will also do the exact same thing, by the way, and is also a 0 mana artifact, it will get countered, and I will get to draw a card off of Multenny's Presence and continue the process. And if I have, say, a Beast Whisperer in play, which draws me a card every time I cast a creature spell. Well, that means now I can cast my Phyrexian Walker. It will draw me a card off a Beast Whisperer, but it will also get countered by my Vexing Bauble, and it will also draw me a card off of Malteni's Presence. So every 0 mana creature I cast now is going to be drawing me 2 cards in this situation, right? So you can really go nuts with this deck and do a whole lot of stuff. You likely could be taking some really long turns. I haven't played this deck a whole lot yet, but I imagine that will be happening. You also could fizzle a whole lot, right? You definitely can, and I've already done it. Had a lot of games where you just sit there going play a land, pass turn, play a land, pass turn, and not do a whole bunch for a few turns. It's a glass cannon deck, right? That's how they work sometimes, but I like it a lot. It can be a lot of fun. It is my newest paper deck, and a lot of fans of my channel will point out, hey, didn't you just do your personal decks video and this wasn't in there? And you are correct. And I also said in that video, I'm only going to have 20 commander decks. And if you watch that video, I talked about my Questing Beast deck and how I probably will never be touching it again. And then I hinted at the fact that a couple of days later, I took it apart. And this is the reason why. Funny enough, I was editing that video and also my 99 deck ideas videos back to back. I recorded my personal decks video around the same time that I was editing my 99 deck ideas video. So a couple of days after I recorded that video, I decided to put the Thrasta idea together. And what's going to get cut? Well, obviously my mono green deck is the easiest thing to cut, which was my Questing Beast deck. And again, it was a deck that I kind of was a little bored with. It just wasn't very interesting, funny enough. The last game I played with my Questing Beast deck, I actually won, but it was just kind of a boring game. I really didn't do anything interesting or exciting. And that's really what I'm going for now with my own personal decks, is I just want to have really a diverse portfolio of decks that do a lot of different things. And maybe some of them are monolith commander decks. And in fact, this is more of a monolith commander deck. This deck doesn't do a whole lot if I don't get my commander out. And funny enough, in my personal decks video, I had the little part in there. Again, I added afterwards. A lot of people probably wondering what was going on there, and Thrasta was in there. That's right. So in the time that I recorded the video originally, to the point where I recorded the extra little tidbit where I was editing the video, I added that in after the fact. That's why my voice sounds a little bit different, because I was making a video for my Patreon talking about how monolith my commander decks are. And at that point, I was already putting my Thrasta deck together, and I had taken my Questing Beast deck apart. So there's the explanation for all that. Why is Thrasta in that part of the video? That's why, because I had already started putting that deck together. And of course, I have it right towards the top as one of my most monolith commander decks for that reason. It very much is a monolith commander deck. However, because I can so easily reduce the cost of my commander, I really don't care. Like if somebody counters it, great, I'll just cast it again. Because of course, cheating commander tax on your commander is so easy, right? So countering it does almost nothing. As long as I have that 2 green mana open, I can just immediately cast it again, right? So even though it is very much a monolith commander deck, it's really hard to disrupt my plan, because my plan is reducing the cost of my commander anyway, right? So my commander so easily cheats commander tax. There it is. There's my newest deck. I will throw a version of the deck I have in the description below, because of course a lot of people will probably be asking, but I'll just say I've already changed it. I've probably have at least 3 or 4 or 5 cards that I've swapped out here. Of course, you're always going to change decks through playtesting, right? So as you playtest the deck, you are going to swap out cards, but I will give you the version that I originally made in the description below. That is it for today though, and thanks for tuning in.